This last panel is very exciting because it's about the economics of our industry have completely changed now that we are cookieless and no view-through window, right? It's going to change the economics of our industry. And I'm joined by a number of people who can actually tell me if this is true or not. So I want to kick this off because let's paint the picture here, right? We were in a world where we were heading towards an automated world. Everything was done via open marketplace. Everything was done via programmatic protocol. But the reality is now, that's not actually quite the case, right? The world is going to change right now. And I want to start with, I want to start with one of the publishers first because this is an interesting place to start because you kind of have been on the sort of like, let's say you've been on the receiving end, right? Well, all this innovation over the last 10 years, but a lot of publishers have got hammered, right, by being bought around, et cetera, right? So your audiences have been discounted as valuable, et cetera. But the pendulum swung back to the publishers. I want to start with the NBC Universal side of things first, and we'll talk to the indie next because there's quite a lot to talk about. But I want to talk about that. What's changed for you over the last 6 to 12 months? Because it is interesting that I remember on a panel where the salesperson was dead. Remember that panel? Why do we need salespeople anymore? Who's going to sell that? But actually, that's not the truth at all. IOs are back in vogue. So let's start with NBC Universal. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, firstly, I'm an eternal optimist, so I'm incredibly excited about that. And I've always been, passionate about the fact that the pendulum is swinging back to premium content and context. We have something incredibly powerful to offer in the industry at the moment. And this is an amazing opportunity for publishers to go and reinstate their position in the marketplace and reinsert a layer of control. Because we have an opportunity to collect incredibly rich first-party data, which is absolutely invaluable today. I think it's definitely swinging back. We're going to see a huge shift back to direct deals, private marketplace, because we've got something special to offer. And then from an NBC Universal perspective, we sit between media and technology, and for us, a priority is privacy, yes, to deliver a better user experience. And to deliver greater impact for our clients and for our marketers. So every single impression has to count, and being able to make it easier for brands to reach, plan, target, optimize, and measure campaigns, whether it's across linear or digital, is going to be absolutely core. So that's what we're doing at NBC Universal at the moment, is building our one platform, which gives clients and agencies and advertisers the ability to access the full portfolio of content. But at the same time, we're going to be connecting upper funnel and lower funnel data with technology, branding and performance, which is incredibly powerful. So yeah, it's shifting back.
Joe, and we had a conversation for this on Zoom, or maybe it was Google Chat, I don't know. We talked about the indie because that's actually quite an interesting development at the indie. It was a print and digital publication, and you went pure digital, and you actually became profitable, but you're seeing like a lot more opportunity around what you're doing with your internals in like Ignite, for instance, your internal agency or bespoke solution, where you're actually doing more sort of like custom stuff. And I want to talk a little bit about that because this is an interesting sort of shift away from a world that we kind of like we were heading towards this fully automated world, fully programmatic world, right? But now we've come back into the middle where there's still the programmatic, there's still the data-driven element, but there's an element of customization, there's an element of, more brand upper funnel stuff. So just talk a little bit about your experience of this over the last 12, 24 months because it's interesting.
I mean, I agree with Hayley completely. We are moving back with the hope that business will now go back to direct and programmatic guaranteed, and we've restructured our commercial floor with that eventuality in mind. But what we are also seeing with some of our peer group or competitors moving towards, we are a member of Ozone ourselves, but moving their sales team to within that Ozone environment or that network environment, is that there's a real gap in the market, and clients still want that bespoke solution. They want branded content, and the quality of that branded content now is on a par with normal editorial content. And from what we're seeing from analytics and data within our organisation, sometimes the engagement with that content from readers is better than normal editorial, what you deem normal journalism. So we are experiencing a huge rise in the number of pitches that we're receiving, the number of wins that we're getting, and also that long-term partnership approach with clients and agencies, that they still want that. You know, back in the days when I was selling print and advertorials with DeVogue, it's still the same now, but it's much more complex. The partnerships are more complex and they're more long-lasting, and people still want that relationship. So we're seeing a huge increase in pitch value coming in, and the investment into that area from us, but also the revenue generation is significant. It's not an aside anymore. It's not a sub level of revenue generation.
It's
it's up
actually real
there.
meaningful money.
Yeah, and I don't see any sign of that diminishing. So from that dystopian view of everything will be automated, and I'm a big fan of programmatic, it's actually shifted already to a more direct relationship building sell, and that is a good thing.
Alexis, you come from the execution side, right? But you mentioned something to me which was quite interesting, that you're seeing sort of this breakup, this fragmentation it's increasing all the time. So how has that changed how you approach it? And when you were talking about your traders, for instance, you know, your traders were kind of executing just programmatic campaigns, but now the same traders have become like adverse, do due diligence on tech and new channels, because every day there is a new walled garden. So just talk about it from an agency perspective, because this actually has a relevance in how you push your money into the ecosystem as well.
I think what's exciting about this is we've learned a lot through the kind of programmatic exposure we've got, and what's exciting is we don't have to lose what we've gained from that. So some of the automation that's come in, when we move into a programmatic direct or a guaranteed environment, we still want to keep the benefits of that, where you can control frequency, geos, where you get more insights to actually what's working and what's not. We didn't have that in the old school world of IO buying, so we want to keep all those benefits, but it's now going to start bringing in how we're doing the deals in that environment differently. And what we were discussing was saying, actually, the guys that have traded in the programmatic landscape or maybe worked in an SSP are invaluable skills for us, because our traditional trade teams that we might go out and negotiate big business deals with brands or with publishers, we still need to go and have that negotiation, but now you need to understand what is the format that's driving the best value for you, what is the audience within there, the publisher audiences that you guys are talking about, and that data value you can bring. How do we know what is the actual impactful data? And so you need to be able to understand the levers that you can pull in the technology and the learning we've taken from running these campaigns and translate that into our direct supply strategy. So some of our key kind of traders of the future, the people doing negotiation deals with publishers, they're not going to be the people that just kind of slam tables and kind of push around our weight.
Old school traders who brought knives and
so
chainsaws to meetings, not anymore.
You can employ that if needed, but it's more around actually bringing those learnings and that insight and that ability to understand the technology, because the barriers that we have actually often come from where the tech isn't quite working. So we might use a contextual supplier like a Grape Shot and find that actually we can't get any scale with someone like an auto trader. And it'll be because the page is refreshing too much and the technology doesn't work. But unless you can go and understand that nuance, you're missing all of your opportunities. So we need the people that can dive into the tech and understand the details, but are also able to go and take those negotiations and understand the value they get with partnering with a publisher.
Does the execution of these campaigns change, Piers? Because we were talking about this, and this is just my own theory, not necessarily a theory of the industry, right? Mm-hmm. But if you have no cookie, right, to target, right, it just becomes a meaningless sort of platform that just bounce around and actually has no value. So are we going to see a shift away from that and more to the programmatic guaranteed, right? You still have data attached, but actually server-to-server integration, so that, you know, it's more likely that Alexis will do deals with the bigger publishers like the Indie or the NBC Universal of the world, rather than the smaller publishers, who we did talk about in the triple lift thing, but they just don't have the scale or the context or even the data to make that work. I mean, is that what you're seeing your side as well? Not necessarily, that's my own theory, by the way, about server-to-server integration, but you can talk about that smaller publishers.
I think we're all sort of aligned in the fact that we see more PGs, more IO deals happening. We can certainly see it on our platform. With the full stack partners we have, we can clearly split out, you know, what percentage is open market, PMP, etc. It's growing, and the direct relationship between publishers and agencies is growing. You know, I'd be cautious to say it's going back to the way it used to be. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily the Friday pub lunch and here's the IO, but the reality is, you mentioned complexity. The amount of times the PMP never scales properly or gets stuck, quite frankly, no one knows what's going on. And really what needs to happen is a phone call between two people, and then something gets addressed, because there's so much going on and so much complexity that it's a problem. I think, is it going to be server to server pushing deals back and forward? Not that simplified. I wouldn't want to put myself out of a job, Kieran.
You have no, but hold on. Of all the vendors sitting here today, right? You have a full stack in the publishers, so you're doing yourself at the service, because actually you've got an integral part of the ecosystem. And let's just say hypothetically that Google have to spin off their ad tech stack, which is possible, and the rumors are that this is the deal they're doing with the European Union. Surely there is an opportunity to evolve the ad server beyond just a sort of like a record of all the campaigns that took place, because there's been little innovation from the Google point of view around that piece of tech, and they've given it away for free for like nearly 20 years so that they can make money off AdX. It's a lovely sales ploy, but surely there is an innovation coming around that execution piece. And I will come back to the sell side, the buy side, because I think that is relevant to that as well, given the recent deals. But just on that point.
Yes. I don't know if Google is going to be split up. I certainly think they're going to have to pay a lot of money to the European Commission somewhere at some point. I would love to say change is coming. I feel as though change is coming. There are and have always been alternatives. The ad server piece, quite frankly, is the core part of the decisioning making for all publishers' inventory. Without it, yes, pre-bid, there are various pre-bid hacks. You can still serve ad and load ads through header bidding. But header bidding was designed as a hack for DFP. So the publisher ad server is the most intrinsically important part of managing everything from a publisher side, at least. It remains the case. There's a handful of players who still operate in that space. We're one of them. There were one or two today who have their own ad servers. The idea that innovation is there and a capability to change a whole load of things without the current marketplace as it is, yes, of course. The deprecation of third-party cookies is changing independent ad tech and the way we all think about transacting media. So don't forget the ad server, because it's a very important part.
Are the publishers seeing that as well, are they?
I was just saying, I think this is where you can see a lot of innovation happening, because you want to be able to enable more features and functionality like measurement and like real measurement, what's happening next, is someone buying something. And this is where clean room technology can become particularly interesting, because you want to be able to connect ad impressions to purchases, to subscriptions, to some form of downstream data sets. And because customers want results, right? They buy outcomes. And yeah, that's the answer, right? There's no kind of clear-cut solution there. I think that's as an industry, we all have to work really closely together to test and learn different things and figure out, well, that worked, that didn't work, why did it work? And, collaborate that way. But yeah, so.
Alexis, I found this interesting because I had a conversation with one of my colleagues recently about this very thing, right? So Mediaocean bought Flashtalk, and we all saw that, right? That was raised an eyebrow. Why is Mediaocean like a workflow solution buying an execution layer? So is the likes of Mediaocean seeing a future where the booking system is integrated into that execution piece, and that's all coming together from an agency? Because, if you work with a handful of publishers, right, and then you have all these different fragmented ecosystems, it all has to come up into sort of one omni-channel sort of platform eventually. Is that the way you see it? This is interesting because this has a real big factor on moving away from like the DSP cookie-based buying. And the trade desk is worth what, $26 billion at the minute, which is an insane valuation. But I feel like that whole buy side is going to evolve into something more omni-channel over the next couple of years.
I can't comment on where Mediaocean's strategy is and that side of things, but I can tell you that the media landscape is still incredibly complex. So if you think we'll have planners that are working in their planning systems, whether that's in Excel sheets or kind of online systems using a variety of data sources, you've then got to get that into a booking system. Mediaocean would be one of the ones that we use. You've then got to flow that into an ad server. You've probably got to put it into an operating system, whether that's a Facebook or Google or Trade Desk. So you can see that we've got so many layers which we're moving the same information through in different formats. We've got to follow our naming conventions to try and keep data integrity so we can then measure and report. And you've got to do that at the level of the campaign, the creative, the audience. So you're trying to manage a flow of information that then gives you your baseline of your digital understanding. And if you can't bring that information together and consolidate the work in there, far too much time is going into admin. So I think if there is movement that direction, it would be a real benefit in the agency landscape to try and kind of streamline some of that information flow, but also add the integrity for reporting. I guess what would excite me more is when I think about Mediation, they tend to be a more traditional company. We're built from a TV base. They've moved obviously fluidly into digital and they do integrate with ad servers. But what I'd be really excited about is if we were bringing something on the creative side into that workflow. So where we're doing dynamic creative and kind of the advances there, and companies like Flash Talking would have a lot more stake in those spaces, that's the bit that we're missing that isn't kind of hitting the landscape right now and kind of having as bigger impact as maybe it could have. So for me, that would be the exciting move, as well as simplifying my life would be much appreciated, but probably not as exciting for other people.
Yeah, there's lots of M&A coming. Joe, Washington Post, they launched a first-party ad network, or a vertical ad network, if you. I call it the van. It's interesting that this now has come back. I mean, I know you guys are doing sort of a lot of bespoke stuff on your own side, but do you see sort of like other publishers going down that sort of, how would I call it, like mini walled garden approach, where they're actually able to leverage their own first party and run effectively their own ad networks on an IO basis? I know it's like, it feels like we're stepping back 10 years. I mean, like, it's kind of I feel like we're talking about ad networks and IO based stuff, but we've got technology to make stuff happen now, right, in a privacy first way. But do you see more publishers going down that route similar to what the Washington Post has done?
I think yes. From our perspective, we've had a huge push in terms of first-party data collection and the insight and recommendations that we can make internally, let alone externally, from the first-party data we've got. And we are fully prepared to be able to operate as a mini walled garden, if you like. I mean, it's quite a big site, so we've got 100 million unique users a month now and billions of page impressions. And what we're trying to do is, yes, we can deliver scale and as a sort of a mini walled garden, but we can also do that via vertical and contextual verticals, and that's the bit that excites me. And I think that's where we'll be putting quite a lot of our focus. So, you know, we've got a big, what we call an A2K strategy, so moving people from anonymous to known, but it's within key verticals, within our whole sort of bigger walled garden, if you like, and that's where we see the opportunity. And whether that is through advertising, through moving people through the funnel to registered to subscription because they're very interested in, say, the travel vertical because they're big fans of Simon Calder and they're part of his newsletter, to e-com, to independent TV, all within a vertical strategy. And that's where we're going to be moving to, I think. So if that partly answers your question, it's yes.
Is that similar for NBC?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're really excited about this new world because it plays into all of our strengths, and you know, consumers want transparency and trust. So we are centralizing all of our first-party audiences into a single consumer profile, which is deterministic, it's privacy compliant, and it's called the NBC Universal ID. And this ID is essentially it's foundational and integral to our overarching strategy and our vision, and it unifies a single user's identity and profile across the whole ecosystem of NBC Universal. So it's stitching together data from, you know, to your point, of course, Peacock, our streaming service, our brands across news, sports, entertainment. It's across Fandango, you know, Rotten Tomatoes, our theme parks, and all our, you know, e-commerce businesses. So it's putting all of these data points into this universal ID, which benefits everyone really. From a consumer perspective, it enhances their consumer experience, it's more personalized. From a marketer perspective, it allows them to have greater impact, specifically around, you know, cross-platform measurements and targeting. And then from our perspective, it's awesome because, you know, it gives us so much more insight in terms of how our consumers are engaging with every touch point across NBC Universal and all of our businesses. So we essentially create like our own little community garden, if you call it that. And then we want to make that data interoperable. So that's where it gets really interesting around clean rooms. So we've rolled out our audience insight hub.
Are you currently using a clean room? Because obviously this is the technology du jour. That and CDPs, Jesus, give me strength. I mean, is that something that you are actively, I mean, this is a question for Alexis as well, but like, is that something you guys are actively using right now, or is it still sort of a test and learn phase thing?
So on the advertiser side, it definitely is something that is actively in use by the right clients. So I guess it's everyone's right on what first-party data they have, and if they have the ability to go into a clean room and make use of it. It is a certain investment to get your data to the point where you can use that and do the matching. And I think the companies that are coming to the market and matching our brands' data with the right publisher data and allowing them to have insights that we wouldn't have previously been able to bring together in a transparent way is excellent. Not every brand can do that though, so not everyone has enough data to bring to the table and they're always ready to make that investment. So it really depends on kind of where that brand is in their cycle and kind of whether they have the direct-to-consumer relationship or whether there's intermediaries in between there that have to change how we do that.
Is that going to be a thing? Do you think the co-oping of data among all the different practitioners in the space, so whether it's an NBC or whether it's independent or whether it's an agency and the marketers, that will become a core piece of capability going forward and revenue generation?
If you look at companies like InfoSum and stuff, they're employing people to be, in effect, matchmakers, data matchmakers. They look at what a brand has, they look at what publishers have, they look at what anyone can bring to the table, and they say, how could we matchmake your unique needs together? And that's the new salesperson for them of the future. It's not kind of your traditional what you would look at, because everyone has got a different amount they can bring to the table. But the other piece I would say is that's not going to work for everyone. So, WPP have done a big deal with Google. We have Bridge, which is our clean room where we can do a lot with the Google data, YouTube data predominantly.
Google's not going to give their data to InfoSum, let's put it that way.
No, and so that's done within Google's environment clearly, but other kind of brands have different use cases, and the depth of data varies depending on who you're bringing to the table. So our job is to help them evaluate that and help them evaluate whether the investment is worth it and kind of who the opportunities are with.
So how do other publishers work in that space? Because, as Alexis said, you're not always going to have that scalability, right, to be working in that. So how does a typical publisher kind of work in the new environment? Like, I mean, is it a case of like, is it going to be a contextual play? Is it going to be long tail? Or I mean, how are you seeing it sort of map out your side?
I think we heard today from a lot of publishers, it's complex. In some cases, though, they're not reinventing the wheel. I mean, much of this is still just about process. We're still trying to find users at the end of the day. People are still trying to signpost to a product or sell something. So how you do it is fine. It gets a bit more complex, but where you've got bunkers or whatever. I mean, much of this is passed through an open RTB message. If I was chatting to LiveRamp in the break, it's like this stuff exists right now. And of course, those more advanced publishers with deep first-party relationships. I used to work at the FT. The sort of data we had at the FT was potentially incomparable, but a lot of publishers don't have that. And an email address, from where I sit, is not going to cut it in 2-3 years. So if that's what you're relying on, you have a problem. So contextual and semantic, yeah, I mean, that's hugely important. Most SSPs or ad tech business have some product, at least that they, it's a viable product that they can transact against.
So the case of most publishers should swim in the upper funnel area, right, and take brand money off the table rather than trying to go for like all-out addressability when the clean rooms will clearly work for some and not for others.
It's a mixture, isn't it? I mean, if you have a direct sales team which is still, executing in market, if you haven't made them redundant 5 years ago, seriously.
That's a very good point. Do you think publishers cut their nose off to spite their face by getting rid of the sales team, and that they're now in trouble in terms of like salespeople have in the current market, right? You could package up a site, you could do custom sales, and then you could serve it via an ad server or whatever.
Yep.
And it seems like even more important now to have an active salespeople go into the market, right? Because as Joe said, there's plenty of briefs out there that you can actually win and make money off.
Yes, I mean, yes.
Bring back the salesperson.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I think it was a terrible mistake, but where are we going to be, where we are, in 2 years, did publishers know that? It's very, very difficult to make money. We know how the pressures are on publishers, particularly if you have a legacy print business. I mean, you don't necessarily have a legacy print business, but many do, and the pressures there. Made redundancies, quite frankly, it was that or nothing. So the direct sales team is going to be massively useful, and I would expect that level of inventory, 10, 15%, you should pay more for that as an advertiser. It should be curated, brought together, sold in a direct deal with first-party data or PG, and you should pay more for that because the level of interaction you should get with the readers from that publisher should be higher, and you should get a better ROI.
Yeah, you were talking about this, about how you kept your sales team in place, and how now that's actually a USP for generating money.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a little bit, because like, I do remember these panels, right, where the salesperson was like, "Gotta get rid of our sales teams," right? Why? Oh, well, we're all automated now, right? It's all about automation. But the reality is like, you still talk to Alexis and her team about, can we do something cool? Can we do something with data? Can we do something customized? Can we do something upper funnel? Like, you know what I mean? There's still a huge place for Rocca lunches and a big expense budget in the local bar.
There is. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be the majority of the revenue. And I think what publishers may have done is think, okay, third-party cookie deprecation, diversify commercial revenues now at the expense of everything. And, that's been a real buzzword, diversification of revenues. That's really important. But if you're looking at, for us, we still have 60% of our revenues are ad-generated. We've got reader revenues, we've got licensing and syndication, really important, digital services. But advertising revenue is still really important. But what we're trying to do is balance subscriptions with advertising, and we coexist quite happily, because the type of reader that is going to be a subscriber, is going to be really engaged with you, is not necessarily, and the content they read is not necessarily the content that you need to drive an ad-generating revenue strategy. It's completely different. The type of content that a subscriber likes is very different. So we're coexisting quite happily. We haven't put the strategy in one pot or bucket, if you like. And I think that is a dangerous thing to do. If you go out all subscription, you get rid of your sales team, you're in trouble now, I think, because there is still plenty of money, hopefully, within the digital marketplace to go around. And if you have done that a few years ago, I think you are a little bit in trouble, and you'll be scrabbling around to get the talent, because as we know, recruitment industry is buoyant, and getting talent 3 to 5 years is very
agencies
difficult.
have a massive open rate. That's and most ad tech companies, I'm sure that's the same at the publisher level as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're aggressively expanding, and we're going to be recruiting 50 to 80 heads over the next 12 months to meet our revenue targets. God knows where we're going to get those people from, because there is a dearth of really good experienced people at the moment, and paying over the odds for those people and that experience is galling.
And can I ask, does that look different, Joe? Because for me, sitting in an agency, it's no longer about a salesperson coming in to sell to me on a base level about telling me what's good about a publisher. That's just not going to cut it. I even need someone that can come strategically to the top end of the agency and talk with us strategically about where we should be testing and learning, and about the impact we can have for a brand. Or I need someone who's more technically capable, that's going to come and understand how I really understand your audiences and understand the formats and the metrics that work. And so kind of it's more like that, less of the generalist salesperson and more of those skill sets that my plea from the agency side would be around.
Yeah, but what I see is sort of the deprecation of the sales person itself within the commercial team. And I'm not saying bring back the old style. I think we can really learn from what we've done over the last 5-7 years in terms of programmatic. You absolutely need those skills, but you also need people who've been decently trained and know their product inside out, and they know and understand the data. So it's not a step backwards. It's picking and choosing the best of both to then deliver the service that is needed at agencies and also with clients. But it's that expansion of those people. We need more of those people, and more of those people who know what they're doing, not less.
That's a very good point. I think we're not sort of falling back. We're learning from what's happened in the last 10 years, and the same skill sets are required now on the agency side as they are on the publisher. You have to have a technical capability, an understanding of the digital product, and you need to be almost product driven, right? It's terribly. It's not. You need to be almost kind of in step with the product team and saying, I can sell this because I understand it and I can articulate it to the agency clients or the marketing clients. And it's just basically taking the best bits of the last 10 years and integrate into the new world. Listen, we've all run out of time, so what I'd like to say is the salesperson's back, right? Yes. If you're a technical salesperson and like to sell a product, you come talk to NBC University, talk to Independent, right? If you're on the buy side and you are a trader with technical capability that can do due diligence on brilliant tech and new data products, come talk to Alexis. And if you want to get rid of Google's ad server and put a really good ad server in, you want to talk to Smart, right? This is the future of the ad server business. So please give a round of applause to everybody. I appreciate the last panel. Thank you very much for staying there. I'd like to thank Elvis, Jesus, and my mother. So thank you very much. I'm joking, by the way. I believe in Jesus.